and you don't have to be the guy who's always coming down hard on players. So I think you can, as coaches, we can do a good job of noticing when things happen and then providing that space for players to lead each other. And I think that's when you really start to have a positive culture. Now there's ways to do it. There's ways to handle the conversations. And I think like those are other coaching points that come up as well. But yeah, having a fun environment, having a competitive environment, having one where players are holding each other accountable and having to the standard in place of the program, that's when I think you really have a positive culture.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Clearing the Bases, the podcast where we step up to the plate and dive deep into the world of youth baseball. I'm your host, Jimmy Filangieri. You know, on this show, we discuss all things related to the preparation and development of youth baseball players, coaches, and yes, even parents. So sit back, settle in, and get ready to hear from some of the greatest baseball minds out there.
I've seen pitchers where they put their glove on, they got their hat on, they got their uniform on, and they go out on the mound and they'll visualize. They're not doing anything. They're not even taking dry swings. They're not even taking dry reps, but they're out there, they're in it, they can feel it. You start to create that aura, that atmosphere around you. So the more real that you can make it, the better it is. If you can't get out to the field and you're a pitcher and you just put your glove on and you stand in your room and do it, that's great. But the more real you can make it, the better it is. So.
Okay, everybody. Today we're going to jump into the professional ranks with Josh Kozuch of the Tampa Bay Rays. So Josh played college baseball. He played at Oakland University and Saginaw Valley State University. He holds a master's degree in sport exercise and performance psychology. He started his major league career as a mental performance coach with the New York Mets. He was first their minor league mental skills coach, then the full season mental skills coordinator, but now he's with the Tampa Bay Rays and he is their mental performance coordinator. Thanks for coming on, Josh.
Yes, thanks for having me. It's been a bit since the playing days in college, but yep, definitely did it. So this is where we're at now. Part of who I am.
You were a catcher, right?
I was. A catcher who wasn't a great hitter. Loved that side of the game, like being involved with the pitching staff and helping call a game and doing all that. But actually, well, we could probably get into this later, but that's a big reason why I got into the mental side was because of my own struggles as a player. I had the yips. I couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. I don't know if you've seen Major League 2, the movie.
Yep.
Rube is the guy and can't get it back there, and I won't go into his methods of how he got over it. I didn't need to do that. But going through some of that, yeah, it led me kind of down this path to where I am now. So without it, I wouldn't be here. But yep, here we are.
Well, I mean, I understand that. I mean, being a Yankee fan, I don't know if you remember Chuck Knobloch.
Yep.
Okay, so he went through it, and believe it or not, it's something that I had a couple of years ago. I had a player on one of my JV teams, catcher. Okay, he was catcher, third baseman. It was weird when he played third base. Not a problem. He could throw the ball, across the diamond. Everything was fine. You put him behind the plate, and he had the same problem you did. He couldn't throw it back to the pitcher. It was crazy.
Anyone else is fine. Literally anyone, but the pitcher, it's weird. I don't wish it upon anybody. It happens. It's actually I don't want to say it's more common now than it's been, but you see it, and not just catchers. You see it in pitchers. You see it in infielders. Literally everybody. But catchers a little bit more common. But wouldn't wish that upon anybody. Pretty miserable going through that stuff.
Oh, I mean, that's got to weigh heavy on you. Now, I was going to say that, being a catcher, just forget about the yips. Just being a catcher, to me would seem like some sort of natural progression would be to get to the mental performance side because as a catcher, let's face it, you're running a game. You got to keep the pitcher calm. There's a lot of things you have to do. So you have to be mentally tough.
Yeah, at times, for sure. I think where it's really helped me, and I've thought about this just over my career, being catcher, you're kind of the field general. You're the leader of the team, but you're in the center of everything. So you you have to connect with everybody. You have to connect with the right fielder. You have to be able to know what buttons to push when you make a mound visit. You have to be able to be an extension of the coaching staff. And I think like going through that experience in high school and college, and not at the professional level, but just seeing how things work and understanding different personalities and those types of things, I think, yeah, it's definitely helped where I'm at now, because you have so many different personalities and so many different egos and all of those types of things. And yeah, I'd like to think about that. My time going through a lot of that stuff playing has definitely helped lay the foundation for what I do now and how I do it. And I talk, obviously, I have a soft spot in my heart for catchers, so kind of gravitate towards them a little bit now, and just helping talk through how they do things and how they talk with their pitching staffs and work with the pitching coaches, catching coaches, all that stuff. Yeah, really, really enjoy that side of the game for sure.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with the different personalities you had mentioned, it's got to be tough.
Yeah, it is. Especially once you get to the pro level where now there's money involved and you're not just dealing with personalities and different backgrounds, but you're dealing with contracts, you're dealing with guys trying to position themselves to get to the big leagues, and then obviously sign a big contract from there. But yeah, there's a lot of ego involved. There's a lot of personality. Yeah, that's just a part of it. But you have to be able to navigate that stuff. So that's one part of what I'm helping do with our guys in the minor league side of things.
Yeah, well, I would say that not most, I would say all good coaches have to know how to navigate those personalities. I don't care what level you're at. It's if you can't do that, then you're going to struggle as a coach.
Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of it too is just do you have a relationship with those players, and I think that's going to help you, especially when it comes to the times when you need to have difficult conversations with a player or even another staff member. What's the depth of your relationship? Because if it's there, it's a little bit easier to swallow that tough criticism or the hard coaching. And it's a little bit easier as a coach to go up to that player and say, hey, man, like, I need you to do this, or this is what we need to do to get you to unlock and get to the next level. And then you also have that trust from the player side of, hey, this guy's invested in me as a human being, and I'm willing to listen to him. I'm willing to listen to this coach because I know he's given me his time, and time is very valuable. So it's a two-way street, obviously, with that. And yeah, dealing with those personalities, I think, got to have relationships at the end of the day. It doesn't matter if it's professional, college, high school, just significant other relationship, whatever it is. Like, relationships are the foundation of everything.
Yeah, I'm glad that you said it, because we do talk about that on the show a lot, about coaching the player as a person first before you coach him as a player. And so, yeah, I'm glad, because otherwise people that listen to the show are going to say, oh, here he goes again.
I firmly believe that's like the key foundation to coaching. So yeah, definitely agree with what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. So okay. So aside from the catching, what made you decide to become a mental performance coach?
You know, I always found myself talking about the mental side of the game. So when I finished playing, I was coaching Legion ball team, and I'm from Michigan, so Midland Berry Hill was the Legion team. I played for them, and then I got into coaching after. And I always found myself talking to players about, what are you thinking in the box, or what are you thinking on the mound, or what are you trying to do here? And you know, I just kind of gravitated towards that. I had no idea that there was a field dedicated towards the mental side, but I just talked about it. Maybe it was some of the coaching that I had previously had. Maybe it was some of just knowing the things that I was going through. But I just kind of naturally gravitated towards that. And what I ended up doing was I heard the idea of sports psychology. This was in 2010s, early 2010s. And at that time, it was people like Ken Ravizzo were out there, Heads Up Baseball, the book like that, Harvey Dorfman. I started to learn about some of these names. And well, what do you do when you're not really sure of something? Go to Google, you type it in, sports psychology, and you start doing some research. And I said, wow, like this is amazing. People are doing this at the highest levels. They're working with big leaguers. I think there was a E60 around that time with Evan Longoria talking about some of his work and what he was doing. And I watched that and I'm like, this is what I need to do. So I started again researching what do I need to do to kind of get there. And at the time, and still now, there wasn't necessarily like a clear path of how to do it. So I said, well, it looked like people had master's degrees, so let me go back to school. Sport, exercise, and performance psych, like you mentioned, ended up getting a degree in that from Barry University, which is down in Miami, Florida. But while I was there, I was working a full-time job. I was working a part-time job. My part-time job, I was on the grounds crew for the Marlins. Uh, so it was crazy because I was working around major league players at the time. I was going to school studying how to work with major league players, and that helped me a lot. I think just being around, interacting, having some conversations with guys every now and again, just about what they were going through. And after that, I was fortunate enough to start an internship with the Mets. They were just starting off their mental skills program at the time, and just kind of grew with their program there. And then, yeah, jumped over to the Rays in 2020. But I got in at a pretty early time. You can see now, if not every team, majority of them have at least one or two mental skills coaches, mental performance coaches, process coaches. But yeah, I started at a pretty good time, and yeah, now 9 seasons in, and we're still doing it. So pretty cool way of kind of making my own path, getting a lot of help along the way. A lot of people to thank and have supported me along this journey, but here we are now, and currently in Durham, North Carolina, with our AAA team, the Bulls. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I that's something that as a coach, it hit me. Geez, I don't know. I'm going to say 5, 6 years ago, where I realized that the X's and O's are important, but they're nowhere near important is the mental. They're nowhere near as important as the mental approach, because
Hmm.
if you don't have a good mental approach, I don't care how good you are, you're not going to succeed.
It's definitely really hard, especially as you get older, right? Like talent's a separator, obviously, and you have to be really good to do this game. But when you start getting to the small margins where every pitch matters and any little mistake can cost you a game, and there's again back to the money when there's millions of dollars on the line and playoff positions and World Series, that's when the margins shrink, and that's when the differences become what's going on up here and how you process a lot of that stuff. And I see it a lot with guys going between AAA and the big leagues, and the ones that are able to stay there, they're able to do things a little bit more consistently, day in and day out. They have a process for what they need to do, and so that's what we emphasize with guys is the process. And we can dive into that stuff a little bit further as we go on here. But yeah, if you don't have a process, you're gonna have a really tough time just sticking around for a while. You might get there, probably gonna be tough to stay.
Yeah, to me, the process is everything.
I would agree. I think what happens a lot of times though is we talk about trust the process, but we don't always do a good job of helping to define what that is. And I think where we've kind of done a good job with the Rays is as a collaborative effort between our group, the hitting coaches, the pitching coaches, the athletic trainers, literally everybody within the organization. We help define what that process is for players. So we identify, what are areas we want to see them grow. And then we, one, communicate that to them, but then we sit down and talk to them about just like, okay, well, how are we actually going to do this? And you start to put a plan in place. And I think that's what gets people to buy in. And it's not just going in and telling them, no, this is what you need to do. And just trust me and trust how, you're creating that ownership between the coaching staff and the players. And it's a collaborative effort to get them to do what we and they need to do to be successful. Are there times where it fails? Yes, probably more often than not. But you can make adjustments. You can change the process. It's not something that's set in stone, but it's just constant conversations, constant collaboration. But at the end of the day, if it's just you saying trust this, you haven't provided the meat and potatoes behind it, the how. I think it's really tough to get guys to do things. So that's what we're talking about. That's what our group's doing. We're talking about the how to have a routine, how to flush a bad pitch, how to move on day to day, how to be a better leader, how to give tough feedback, how to navigate being away from home, how to be in a different country for a lot of our guys. So it's that how to piece. So we spend a lot of time talking about with our guys.
I love what you said about the process and process goals. I want everybody to understand. Yeah, we have to set process goals for our players and help them to understand what those goals are. However, they have to be attainable. So if a guy is running I don't know, a 7.560, we can't tell him that your process goal is going to be to run a 6.5, okay? Because that's not going to happen. We want to take it in small chunks so that they actually get those victories of achieving those goals. Am I wrong?
So I would consider, so that is more of an outcome type goal, like that 7.5, that results based, I guess, time or goal. So it'd be the same as a guy, like we want him to hit 300. Okay, that's more of an outcome goal. The process goal are what are the steps that I need to take to actually achieve that? So you could maybe get a 6.5, but we need to work on our first step. We need to run with resistance. We need to do more explosive training in the weight room. Like those are the more process oriented goals. So those are like the steps necessarily that I need to take to achieve the outcome goal. That's how I would word things. So those are, I look at this, the process is more, this is the steps. The results are more of an outcome based goal.
Right. I got you. So, but again, to make them attainable, so you're going to have to do these processes. Okay. But don't expect to drop, a full second off of what you're doing.
Yes. They need to be realistic for sure.
Yeah, because that's something
just far enough away where it like keeps you pushing also, where it's like, okay, I can get to this, but I'm really gonna need to bust my ass to get there, So that's keep the carrot a little bit further out in front where we got to keep chasing.
Right. Yeah, because that's again something with this game that I have. Well, I find myself saying it over and over again to people is that this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. So everything takes a very long time to develop. So, if you're struggling with your hitting, let's say, and, we get you on a plan to get you start hitting the ball better, well, you're not going to do it for a week or two and then all of a sudden start hitting 350. That's not going to happen. It takes time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we run into that quite a bit where it's like guys expect to see a result tonight. I made this adjustment in my swing, or I started this new practice, the visualization practice. I need to get 3 hits tonight. And if I don't get 3 hits tonight, well, that doesn't work. That's not the case. Like you got to give it some time. And it needs to be part of your day-to-day routine. So yeah, that part definitely resonates, and it's happening at all levels everywhere.
Yeah. So again, this is, this show is geared towards youth baseball. So something that I really want people to understand, and maybe you can explain it better than I can, is, it's never too early to start working on mental performance with players. Okay. Mm-hmm. So just give us a little rundown, from a young player, let's say, I don't know, age 8. Okay. How would you start or suggest to coaches how they start working with players at young ages?
I think I start with just basic needs. Are you getting enough sleep? Are you eating the right types of food to give your mind and body the best chance to have success? Like we start there, go to bed at a decent time and eat 3 meals, 4 meals a day, take care of those things. And then when it comes to the mental side, what do you want? What do you want to be thinking when you're in the box? And I think a lot of times players or coaches, we think we need to force feed 10 things for people to understand when they're hitting. And what happens is whether they're 8 years old or 28 years old, if you're in the box and you're thinking, okay, I got to do this with my hands and I got to do this with my leg and I got to load here and I got to get in I think it's really hard to hit. I'm not a hitter now anymore, but I just remember when I tried to hit, if it was anything more than one thing to focus on, it's really difficult. That's still true today for players. So I think as coaches, what's the one thing we want our guy to focus on, our 8-year-old kid? And I think honestly at that age too, just have fun. Find the enjoyment. I think we try so hard to, okay, you got to do this and we need to get a college scholarship and you need to go to this high school and you got to, but if the kid doesn't have the love for the game, he's not going to want to stay with it. And I've seen that in players when they get to the professional ranks, they're really talented. They hate coming to the field. And it's just rather unfortunate because I love this game. The people that are in it love being around it. And when you got a guy that's so talented, but he just dreads coming to the field, you just feel for him. And a lot of that is because of how they were coached when they were younger and just how parents were. And it's like I said, it's just unfortunate. So keep it to one focus. Allow them to have fun and take care of just the basics, eating and sleeping. I think that's where I start with a lot of this stuff. Like, I think what you can do as a coach too is, okay, let's say a guy's going from the dugout to on deck to the box. Just ask the player, like when he goes up there, hey, what's your thought process here? Like, what are you trying to do, or what's the one thing you want to focus on? And just get him to verbalize it back to you and say, okay, cool, great, go get him, and let him go. So keep it to one simple thing. Keep it simple, keep it fun, take care of the basics, and I think that's where I'd start with the 8-year-old kids.
Yeah. I feel that a very big part of young players is we need to teach them, again, 8, 9, 10 years old, begin teaching them, number one, that it's okay to fail, and number two, how to deal with that failure, because we see them at the high school level, and it's really puts like me in a bad spot because, you know, if a kid strikes out and he throws his helmet, I'm not going to react real good to that, okay? Whereas if somebody maybe taught him when he was younger that it's okay to strike out, everybody strikes out, you know, and how to deal with it, then, you know, the kid will be better equipped as he climbs the ranks.
Absolutely. I think to your point about how do you deal with failure, I don't know. Yeah, we probably don't do a great job explaining that to kids. It's okay to fail. What does it look like? What are good ways to respond? I even think like you could easily go on YouTube and see examples of guys blowing up in the big leagues after a strikeout, after a bad play, those types of things, and showing it to your team and being like, guys, like this is happening, but we're not going to act like that. Like that's not okay. That's not okay for our program. That's not how we act. That's just not part of it. I think just showing them, they may not simply know. This is what we want to be like. This is what we don't want to be like, and it's not okay. So I think, yeah, showing them and talking through them like how to fail. Another way to be able to understand how to fail is like, okay, it happened. What am I going to do to move on? And having some sort of physical cue. So a lot of times, guys, it'll be like once you take off your batting gloves, like that's signifying that your at bat is over and we move on. Maybe it's retying your shoes. Maybe it's taking a deep breath. Maybe it's having something that you say to yourself to kind of get back to the present moment. I think a lot of times we don't know how to process failure because we get stuck on it. It's already done. We have to be able to move on. And there's going to be another pitch. There's going to be another play. There's going to be another at bat. I think understanding that and being able to teach that to players, that's going to help them be able to manage some of that failure a little bit better as well. So that's where I'd go with some of that.
I also think that we can teach our players how to fail by the way we as coaches deal with failure because, let's face it, we're not perfect either. And I think that like a lot of times, I don't know, I'll use as an example a first and third play, okay? So it doesn't go right and, you know, a player does something wrong or whatever. I think it's really important, like me, because I've done this, is go over and say, hey, guys, put it aside. Don't worry about it. That's on me. We didn't work enough on it in practice, so it's not your fault. Let's move on, but it's mine. Don't worry, guys. I'll get better at it. And, you know, da-da-da-da-da. So I think if we can lead by example, I think that will help them a lot.
Yes, 100%. We say, I mean, you probably say this well, like baseball obviously is a game of failure. It's going to happen. I think providing opportunities to fail in practice is also another way because then you're able to practice failing, like, and showing them like it's okay, making aggressive base running mistakes, you know, I'm talking at the youth level, making the first or last out at third base, like, and then talking about after why we don't want to do that. And just some of the best ways to learn is to just simply experience. And we can tell them till we're blue in the face and don't do this or don't do that or how to do this, but you got to experience it. So as coaches, like providing opportunities for failure to happen. And then to your point, your response as a coach, that's going to be really important. But taking the time to reflect on it either in the moment or after practice or after a game, like that's obviously a huge piece as well. The timing of when the feedback is given. So let's say first and third, a guy gets thrown out and you throw your hands up at third base and you're upset. I get it. You're upset. Maybe that's not the best moment for it. So I think like as coaches, like always being mindful of like, okay, is this the best time to do this? Do I need to be the one to say this? Should it be after? Should it be not? Like all those things taken into consideration. And I'm sure you're doing this. I'm sure a lot of coaches are doing this type of thing, but just something to consider.
I tell you, it's funny that you just brought that up about, throwing your hands up in the air, because that's something that I've always struggled with for many, many years. And it became like I don't know, we'll call it my goal, okay, is to not let my players see my emotions, okay? Mm-hmm. And it's hard. It's really hard. But again, I think it's so important that I keep working on it, and less and less and less. Like, typically I really don't react to much during a game because I don't want them to see my reaction. Go play the game, and after the game, we'll talk about it.
Yeah. Have you shared that with players ever? Like that it's hard sometimes for you to not put the hands up or show emotion?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's awesome because it shows like you as a coach, you're human too, and you're going to make mistakes, and this is how you're fighting and battling and going about and working through like that's going to back to that part about relationships. That's going to help you have stronger relationships with players as well. Like, so that's awesome that you're able to say that and be vulnerable. And then when they see you do it one time, they're like, Coach, like, what are you doing? And then they hold you accountable too, and then it becomes fun.
Yes.
So no, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing right now.
Oh, no, I mean, like I said, I believe that, we never stop learning as coaches, and whatever I can do that's going to make my players better. And like you made a good point too. You said you laugh about it. Okay. So, whatever, I'm in the dugout and somebody misses a cutoff, which is something that really gets me going when you miss a cut. Right. So, and I bang the bench, like, damn it, he missed a cut again, and I'll just look at like whoever's around me and saying, my bad, guys, and they all start laughing because they know what I mean, but yeah, it makes it fun.
Yeah.
So, if you had to give advice, we talked about it a little bit about building relationships with players. How do we do that?
Yeah, I think you just, you got to spend the time with them. I think a lot of it too is, I get it as youth coaches, you're not like in pro ball, we're at the field all day, right? You're hanging out in a clubhouse, there's space, there's lunch rooms, there's dugout, there's space to just spend time. The youth level, you're not spending 12 hours a day with each other. So how do you do that? I think it's even small pockets or small groups, like getting together with your players and just asking them like, how's school? What are you learning about? What's interesting to you? What do you want to be when you grow up? Like those types of things, and just getting a general interest and taking general interest in the players' lives is going to be really important. And then if you can have individual conversations, try to do that as much as possible. I think that's honestly the best way to do it. And then, if you can as well, like getting to know the parents. I know parents are definitely a challenge in the shoot, even professional level. They are a challenge.
Really?
Yes. Not to the point where they're calling and being like, why is my kid not playing? But to the point where they're impacting a player or players after games based on how they're talking to them. And parents, they don't go away once they get to the professional ranks. But yes, to that relationship, like getting to know the parents, getting to know them, like taking interest in the family. If you know that they have, a field trip coming up and asking them how it goes, like just remembering things is helpful. If they have not wives for youth, but a girlfriend or thing, hey, how's Sarah doing? Like those things matter. How's your dog? Just basic human things that we a lot of times take for granted. Honestly, the best way to build those relationships. I've had conversations with college coaches as well of how they're trying to build culture and connection, and they'll have meetings, if not monthly, weekly, where they just will sit in a classroom and they'll put a topic on the board and just start talking about what's the biggest challenge you've ever had or overcome. how do you think you're going to be better at the end of the year than you are now? What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew 6 months ago? And just like throwing out open-ended questions and taking 20 minutes a week to do this. Yeah, I think that fosters connection and builds relationships. So, it doesn't always have to be baseball, baseball, baseball. It can be 15 minutes of just relationships. And I think that would be just as impactful as working on bunt plays for an hour at times. So those are things I would consider, things that we've done also. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the culture building is important, especially again in my situation because there was none. So we're trying to build it, and I love what you said about the classroom stuff because it's hard. It's really hard for us to actually get that classroom time. But I have to, as a coach, make sure that I put that in my practice plan that on X day we're going into the classroom and we're going to do this. And to your point, once a week, yes, we have to do it. It's part of our training.
Yeah, that's awesome that you guys are doing that.
Yeah.
People aren't people are not. So it's making the time. It seems simple, but just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy. So
Well,
yeah.
well, wait a minute. I don't want you to misunderstand me. My classroom stuff with my team last year was sporadic. I would say during the whole season, maybe 6 times that we went into the classroom. But what
Yeah.
I was saying, I was taking your advice, saying that this
Yep.
coming year we're going to do it once a week, da 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 da,
Yeah.
because it's important.
Yeah. But would love to hear how that goes for you guys because I think it'd be really impactful.
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
So
Great.
let's talk a little bit about body language, okay? Because
Yeah.
I'm a big body language guy. Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that. And I mean, obviously, when a player's struggling, to most people, it's obvious in his body language. But is there anything else other than body language when a guy's struggling that will tip you off?
I mean, that's number one, right? Because it's there, you see it. I understand, and we understand as coaches, like you're gonna make mistakes. There's gonna be failure. You're gonna be pissed at times, and that's okay. I mentioned this earlier. What's going to happen next? If it lingers to the next pitch, if it leads to you make an error in the field and you're AB, you come up and you take 3 pitches right down the middle, and you come back to the dugout and you're hanging your head. Well, then that's when I have a problem, and that's when we have a problem with it. I think one thing that has really helped when it comes to talking about body language is not only the way that it makes you look on the field and how your coaches are going to see you, but you're also giving information to the other team that they got you and you're giving them an advantage. And if you're competing, why would you want to give any sort of advantage to your opponent in that moment? And I think that helps a lot of times get guys to understand, like, you know what? Yeah, like I'm mad, but I'm not going to show them because I'll get the next out, or I'll make the next play, or I'll get the next at bat. So that's where I'll start a lot of times when it comes to body language. The other thing too is just you never know who's watching in the stands. It may be a scout, it may be a grandparent, it may be a kid. This is their first game coming to a field at a beautiful ballpark, and they see a professional acting this way, and it's just like, well, do you really want to be that example for people? So that's number two when we talk about body language. And then yeah, the third piece is just, okay, now you're upset, what are you going to do about it? And having that plan, that process for how to manage some of those emotions. Guys will come in and they're upset, or they say some choice words, and again, I get it, it's heated, it's emotional, you care, but you got to be able to control it. You have to, or this game's going to eat you up. So that's how we deal with body language and talk about it. But probably the easiest thing to notice when something's going bad, I don't want to say I'm looking for that stuff because you don't want bad things to happen, but definitely a heightened sense when a mistake happens, or there's a strikeout, or a guy gives up a homer, like kind of pay attention a little bit to some of that stuff a little bit more. So there's people watching for sure.
Yeah, I will. Pitchers in particular, you know, bad body language, I'll walk out to the mound and say, you know why I'm out here, right? And they'll look at me and they'll go, no, coach, why? I said, because you look like a 4-year-old. You're
Yep.
pouting like a 4-year-old. All right, look, and I'll tell them this. I'll say, listen, I said, just forget about what just happened. Reach back, throw the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Compete. Let's go. Okay. And listen to me. Okay. I'm not taking you out of the game. I'm not. I don't care if you give up 4 home runs. I'm going to leave you out here till you learn how to handle it and you
Mm-hmm.
learn how to accept it. Okay. So don't pout like a 4-year-old no more. Let's go to work. And I'll walk
Yeah.
away. And you want to know
Yep.
something? 9 out of 10 times, it usually works.
Yep. Yep. And hopefully that's the last time you have to have that conversation with them, So that's good.
Yeah, because the body language tips you off. So, anyway, so team environment. Let's talk a little bit about that. Okay, so again, very very important. How do we work with teams to create that environment? And what would you think is a good environment to have, and how the players should be?
I think again back to that piece of fun, like it has to be something where guys want to show up to the field every day. This game's going to beat you down already, but if you feel like you're going through it with somebody or a group of people, it helps. And nothing feels better than when you're also winning with that same group. So yeah, winning's great, right? Like you want to win. So how do you create a competitive environment? Well, like doing activities where you're competing every day, whether it's playing ping pong or you got cuts and relay drills, but you have 2 groups going at the same time and you're competing and there's the loser has to, I don't know, pick up balls after practice. Like creating just that competitive environment throughout the day or throughout a practice helps, because then it sets the standard of, hey, we're always competing. It's fun to win, but at the end of the day, we're going to come back. We're still going to be a team and we're going to be close. I think another part that is really helpful is when you have a player-led group, where they're the ones holding each other accountable. When a guy doesn't run a ball out to first base, and it doesn't need to be the coach coming to that player and be like, "Hey, why didn't you run that out?" But when it's one of your players that goes, "Hey, man, I know you're upset. It's not how we do things here," and that sometimes is difficult to get players to that point. So what we try to do as coaches, or what you can do as coaches, is just like say it happens. You go up to one of the guys on the bench and you say, "Hey, like go check on Johnny and see why he didn't run that ball out." And that player will be like, "You want me to do that?" And yeah, I do. So you're enabling that conversation to happen. You're providing the space to do it, and you don't have to be the guy who's always coming down hard on players. So I think you can, as coaches, we can do a good job of noticing when things happen and then providing that space for players to lead each other. And I think that's when you really start to have a positive culture. Now there's ways to do it. There's ways to handle the conversations. And I think like those are other coaching points that come up as well. But yeah, having a fun environment, having a competitive environment, having one where players are holding each other accountable and having to the standard in place of the program, that's when I think you really have a positive culture of doing things. Putting in actual work, going hard, like doing those types of, yes, that's also a part, but those would be the 3 where I'd say I'd kind of start and really try to focus on as coaches, as teams. I think that all that's important.
Awesome. I love that. I love that about, one player actually telling one player to go and hold another one accountable. I love that because again, something that I've never done, but I will be doing it because it
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
I think a lot of it too is now you're coaching leaders, and like as any coach, like you're coaching the next wave of people. So if you can provide opportunities, and maybe it doesn't go well, maybe that player goes up to him and leads the conference, and that's probably a good conversation point after of like, okay, this is what's going to happen in the real world. When you're working at a business and your boss says this and your a peer passes you for a promotion or this or that, like how are we going to handle this? So you're teaching life lessons as well. And you guys know this as coaches, but I think if you can give them examples in the real life challenges that are going to happen on a baseball field, I think that's only going to help and just provide more opportunities for you as coaches to get better at it too. So yeah, I think it's just low hanging fruit to be able to do this stuff. I'm sure there's probably plenty of times as coaches where we can be like, this would be great if somebody else could handle this. And yeah, this is a good example to be able to do that.
Yeah, like I said, I love it. It's fantastic. You know what I wanted to get into a little bit, and again, you don't have to go crazy, but I just kind of want to touch on a couple of mental performance topics, we'll say. And if you could give everybody like I don't know, like maybe just like a brief description of what it is and, like how you should handle it or what you should be doing with it. And the first thing, because I'm a big guy on this, the first thing I want to know about is self-talk.
Yeah, I think, okay, you are the most important you speak to every day. You're the most important person that you speak to every day. You're the most important person that you speak to every day. I think that's key to remember. I think we get so caught up in what's going on up here and we talk so negatively to ourselves where it's like, man, you suck, or you shouldn't have did that, or you're better than this. And I get it because you're the one who put in all the time and put in all these hours and you expect that from yourself. But would you ever talk to a teammate that way? Would you ever talk to a coach that way? And I think when you realize that, no, I wouldn't tell my teammate he sucks. I wouldn't tell my coach that I'm not any good. I wouldn't have this doubt. And you start treating yourself like a teammate, well, then I think the self-talk starts to improve. There's a good, it's a Receiver on Netflix, the documentary that they did last year where they're following like George Kittle, Debo, like all those guys. And there's a ton of clips in there of George Kittle and his self-talk and how he's saying things before a game and those types of things. That is the perfect example. So if anybody's out there and wants to find any examples of what self-talk should look like, look up George Kittle Receiver Netflix series and there'll be plenty of good examples. But you're the most important person you speak to every day. So make sure you're putting in good thoughts.
Yeah, I think self-talk is a very important thing. We work on it with my players all the time because everybody does it. So we might as well do it the right way.
We all have that internal voice. It's a part of it.
Yeah.
And what are you listening to?
Okay, so another big thing with me is failure. Okay, so we touched on it a little bit. Do you have any like failure protocols? And what I mean by that is, I'm playing center field, ball comes out to me, it's on the ground, and it goes between my legs all the way back to the wall. And now it's over with, and now I'm sitting there pouting like a 4-year-old. What do you do?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit, like having some sort of cue, like this is going to be your process. Okay, I failed. I made the mistake. What's my process going to be? I'm going to have some sort of physical cue that I do to like signify that the play's over. Whether it's, let's say it's in center field. I'll use it in the box where you strike out or you swing at a miss at a pitch. You take the dirt and you just rub your feet with it, or you're on the mound and you wipe the rubber clean. You do something like that in the outfield as well, where you take your glove off, or you do the same thing where you wipe the grass off. That's the physical cue to kind of signify, okay, play's over. Okay, now it's done. Take a deep breath, or it's like, okay, like we move on. And then you have that self-talk that you guys were talking about, and you say something to yourself that's going to get you back in the right frame of mind to make the next play. So it's okay, I got this, or focus on the next play, or an analogy I use a lot is win, W-I-N. So you ask yourself the question, what's important now?
Yeah.
And it gets you off of what has already happened and ruminating on the past, and it gets you to focus on like this moment, being present, being where I need to be, being where my feet are. So that'd be my process for how to handle failure, and just sticking to that. So the physical cue, the breath, the verbal cue, the self-talk that you have to yourself, it's going to give yourself the best chance to have success and move on. Because obviously in the heat of the moment in a game, like nobody cares that it just happened. Like next play is coming, next pitch is happening. If you want to think about it and go over it, we do it after the game. And we can go over what went wrong. Maybe I didn't have the right footwork, or maybe I took a bad route, or maybe I didn't see it off the bat. Okay, we'll work on that tomorrow. But in the moment, we can't be thinking about that stuff. So we need to focus on this pitch right now. So that'd be how I'd handle failure um, over the course of a game like that.
Yeah. The win, what's important now, big thing. We use it all the time. Because again, there's nothing, again, being present. That's, being present, believe it or not, is something that I struggle with making my players understand what that means to be present. I don't know why, but it's just something that I seem to have a hard time with.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have one idea of why. I think it's phones.
Oh,
I think
geez.
because there's so many distractions now, where we don't know how to just sit. We're on our phones. We're entertained by that. I Okay. College football is today. I'll watch a game, watching it. Commercial comes on. What do? I go on my phone and I scroll Instagram, TikTok, whatever. Okay, game's back on. You're back at it. Okay, somebody calls, and by the time the game's over, I'm like, I don't even know if I really watched the game because you're caught up doing all. And this is just stupid Saturday afternoon stuff. So I can't imagine like being a kid where this is how you grow up and how things are done. And you're just constantly on a phone. I think that's a part of why. So I think how do we get better at that? Providing the space, providing 5-10 minutes where it's just like we're just gonna sit here, we're gonna talk about this concept, we're gonna do this. There's gonna be no phones. Like we got to do work on a lot of that stuff. Like it's hard for people to just sit down and read a chapter of a book. It's hard to just sit outside or go for a walk because there's so many distractions. So I don't think it's just a kid thing. I think it's a society thing at this point. Like it is hard to be present.
Yeah.
It really is. So I can definitely empathize with you.
Yeah, because I think a lot of times that the way a high school kid will look at it is, well, yeah, I'm present, I'm here.
Yeah.
They don't understand that it's a mental thing of being here, being prepared to do what we need to do. They don't understand that for some reason, I don't know why, but this year, maybe it was because it was a new program, but typically I'll have my guys meditate before we start practice.
Nice.
And I've done it for all of the years in the past, but I don't know, maybe this year just because it was a new program. But I believe that's so important because, again, clear your head, get everything out, and now let's focus on the task at hand.
No, I think that's great. You do that before practice, you said?
Before. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Love it.
jump in there. Give us a little bit about that because, again, it's something that I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I think it's important too. I've seen, shoot, I've done this where you have all the guys lay out and they're spread across the grass and they're doing breathing exercises, and there's value in that. But I also think there's just value too of like just sit there for 30 seconds or 60 seconds or 5 minutes, whatever it is, and be there. No phones, no distractions, no laughing at your buddy next to you, just clowning around. Like just sit there. It's hard to just focus on breathing. I think that's an easier thing to kind of teach and focus on because it's like, okay, focus on inhaling for 4 seconds, hold for one, exhale 4 seconds, hold for one. It gives you a cadence. It gives you something for your mind to chew on. And I've done that, and it is helpful. But at the end of the day, I think if you can just like take 5 minutes and just be there, I don't care how it's done. It doesn't matter. So that's what I would do with players. I think I've done it. Continue to. We don't do it so much in a team setting now because it gets very individualized. Like as guys continue to get older, it's a lot harder to just be like, okay, guys, let's get together and meditate for 5 minutes. But yeah, if you're doing it and have the space to do it, I think that's great. It doesn't matter where it is. Ideally, it's obviously somewhere where there's no distractions and things like that. But sometimes it's okay to do it where there's distractions because it's just how you're going to deal with it. So maybe you're always in the classroom and you do it in there, and then next month we go outside and do it in center field, or I don't know, I don't know, like somewhere where there's other distractions and things going on. Like you can practice with it and there's ways to do it, but get rid of the phones.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's, to me, that's a given. If I see a phone during like a baseball practice, holy crap. You don't want to be one of my players if I see that.
I can imagine, but Yeah, anything like that is going to be helpful.
Okay, so another big one with me is visualization.
Mm.
Okay, so let's talk to people about that. What is it? How do we do it? That type of thing.
Hmm. It's hard a lot of times for players, for people to understand what it is. So where I start with it a lot of times is just imagine closing your eyes, or you could close your eyes and think about your bedroom, or think about your kitchen in your house, and where's the refrigerator, where's the kitchen table, what color are the cabinets, where are the forks, the spoons, the knives, and where's the sink, and what color is that? And you could probably imagine a lot of that in your head, and you're not in your kitchen. Well, that's visualization, because you're able to play this picture in your mind without necessarily being there. So the point of this skill or this tool is to be able to use that for your performance. So now let's imagine being on a baseball field. Let's imagine it being on your local field where you've been and you've played. If you tell somebody, okay, imagine playing at Yankee Stadium in front of 40,000 people, sometimes it's really hard to do because you've never actually done it. So go to your local field, and let's imagine you're in the batter's box, or imagine you're on the mound, and take yourself through that. And what do we want to do? So I've come up with scripts for guys where it's like, okay, we want to work on sliders. Okay, well, what do we want to focus on? I want to focus on throwing it at the catcher's left shoulder and starting it there. And I want to see the pitch break, um, you know, 2 to 8 on a clock, and seeing themselves go through that. I think that's, to me, what visualization is you're getting reps in your mind without necessarily taxing yourself physically of having to throw a pitch or having to step in the box and take swings. Your brain doesn't recognize the difference between what's real and what's imagined, and you're essentially getting yourself reps at something that is free. You just have to take the time to be able to do it. It's hard. It's hard for guys to do. That's why I'll a lot of times write up a script for them. I'll record it. I'll say like, okay, now imagine bottom of the ninth. You're in the box. You're stepping up on deck. You take in the crowd. You take in the noise, like all these things, and you build this script out for them. You record it, and then they play it for themselves, and then they listen to it, and it's taking them through a guided visualization. One thing I would say when it comes to visualization too is there's two ways to kind of do it. One is first person, so you're seeing it through your eyes, right? Like you're in the box, you see, like you're watching the pitcher, you're living it. The other one's third person. So third person is when you're more like essentially watching a video of yourself play. Sometimes that's easier for guys to do. So understanding like what style works best for you. Is it better first person? Is it better third person? I don't know. It just depends. A lot of times guys that they watch a lot of video of themselves, or they watch a lot of film and they're going back over it, it's a little bit easier for them to do third person because that's just what they're used to watching. That's what they're used to paying attention to. So they'll go with that. They'll be like, Josh, like can't really put myself in that frame of mind, but I can do it if I'm like watching myself. That makes sense to me. So I'm okay, cool. Like let's do a third person one. Last thing I'll add when it comes to visualization, the more real that you can make it, the better it's going to be. Like you can visualize sitting in your bed or while you're in bed and pick yourself out on the field and do those types of things. But if you can go, I've seen big leaguers do this where they step into the box. They'll get to the field at noon, 1 o'clock. They'll step into the box. Nobody's on the field. They got a bat, they got their gloves on, they got a helmet on, and they're just standing there. They're in the environment, they're in that atmosphere, and they're playing this out, and it feels real. I've seen pitchers where they put their glove on, they got their hat on, they got their uniform on, and they'll go out on the mound and they'll visualize. They're not doing anything. They're not even taking dry swings. They're not even taking dry reps, but they're out there. They're in it. They can feel it. You start to create that aura, that atmosphere around you. So the more real that you can make it, the better it is. If you can't get out to the field and you're a pitcher and you just put your glove on and you stand in your room and do it, that's great. But the more real you can make it, the better it is. So that's my abbreviated take on visualization and how we've taught it and done it.
Well, I love the level of detail When you were saying about a pitcher and, where he's locating his slider, that's something that is, to me, is really, really important because, again, you could tell a hitter, let's say, okay, get in the batter's box in your mind and, do what you just said, visualize that you're taking an at bat. Well, no, let's make it more detailed. Okay, so you're taking it bat. The first pitch is a slider. Next pitch is a changeup. Visualize all of these things. So I love the level of detail.
Yeah, I mean, imagine you're a hitter and okay, what's our plan going into the box? So I want to hit a fastball that's middle away. Okay, great. Now let's visualize. Okay, first pitch is a slider. I'm going to take it. Okay, now it's 1-0. Next pitch, another slider because he's trying to double me out. It's a strike. I'm taking that one too because my plan going into the box was I'm looking for a fastball. So you can get really in depth with this. I wouldn't recommend doing that with a lot of youth athletes, but that's how it can go when it comes to a lot of this stuff. And then when it actually happens in the game, it's almost like deja vu for a lot of these guys because it's like, man, I was just thinking about this. Or, you get that first pitch slider and you're not as eager to swing at it because it's like, well, I've seen this and my plan is hit a fastball. So I'm just going to do what I've been practicing.
Yeah. And I mean, I agree with you that very young players, but I could see scripting something like that for my seniors, my juniors, my seniors. Yeah. It's something that they should be doing. But yeah, with a younger kid, it's maybe visualizing, making contact and hitting a line drive back up the middle.
Yep.
You know?
Perfect.
So, well, what I need you to do, if you don't mind, is give me some final thoughts or words of advice or anything else that you'd like to share with the youth coaches and youth players out there.
I think a big thing that's talked about is confidence. And confidence is great. And I am a big proponent of being confident. I think, the more confident you feel, the better you feel, obviously, going into performance. But I think a lot of times athletes think that if I don't feel confident, I'm not going to play well. And that's not the case. You can play well and not feel confident. There's probably been games, and you could ask athletes, you could ask your players this, where you felt good and played poorly, and you felt bad and played well. But for some reason, when it comes to confidence, we think that if we don't have it, we're going to suck today. And that doesn't need to always be the case. A lot of times, confidence, when we think about it, comes from past performance. So if I played bad yesterday, or if I was 0 for 4 with 3 punchies, probably going to struggle today. Yesterday has no bearing on what today has to do. So we don't need to get caught up in past performance all the time to determine whether or not we're going to be confident. So when I talk about confidence, if we're going to talk about confidence, yes, past performance is huge, but it can also come from positive people. It can also come from positive self-talk. It can also come from visualization. So there's other areas where confidence can come from that isn't always tied to just past performance. So that would be where I kind of sign off on a lot of this stuff. Is confidence is great to have. You don't need to have it. If you want it, don't always go to past performance, especially if you've been struggling. Try to find confidence in other areas, whether it's other people, whether it's the things that you say to yourself, whether it's through visualization and these other types of tools that you can use that I think a lot of times we don't realize we can use to help us feel or be a little bit more confident. So confidence is tricky, but I know the word is thrown around a lot, and I know it's talked about a lot with players and athletes in all sports. So that'd be my last little caveat on that. And then, what's your process for how you coach? What's your process for how you navigate difficult conversations? How are you becoming a better leader? How are your players ask yourself as coaches, what's my how to blank, and start to go through some of that stuff. So that'd be the last thing that I would add for this, but happy to continue conversation. If anybody had questions or anything like that, reach out.
That's the next thing I was going to say is give everybody your socials and how they could reach you.
Yeah. At Josh_Kozuch, Kozuch. Find me on LinkedIn, Josh Kozuch, first, last name. Best way to do it. Happy to connect with anybody and everybody. I love talking about this stuff, and I'm happy to get into the weeds with anybody and help any way possible. And Yeah, thank you for having me on here. It's been great.
Oh, you kidding? I mean, this was fantastic. I owe Lane, a big, I have a big debt of gratitude with him because it kind of came out of nowhere. And it was funny because I had received a couple of days earlier, I received a text message from a friend of mine who was a guest on the show and now has become a friend. Hey, you got to get Joey Greeny on your show. So it's okay. So, whatever. And Joey called me and we talked and we said, yeah, when you guys got back from the West Coast that he was going to reach out. And then days later, Lane says, hey, I got and I'm like, what is this? Tampa Bay Rays Day? I mean, it's crazy.
But Greeny's awesome. I can't wait to hear how your guys' interview goes. That'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Lane's great. Yeah.
What's that?
Lane's great as well. Like, really thankful for him setting this up. Like, that's.
Yeah. I mean,
great.
Yeah. And what's really ironic is when I spoke to Greeny, he grew up like I could throw a rock and hit the town where he grew up in. So he's a local guy.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. But
he's doing it.
What's that?
He's doing it.
Yeah.
He has a beat.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, look, Josh, this was fantastic. I cannot thank you enough for taking some time out. I know this is a busy time for you. And look, good luck. And yeah, it was a great pleasure.
Yeah. No, thank you, Jimmy. Looking forward to continued conversations with you and good luck to you guys this year as well.
Thank you so much. Well, that right there was a powerful show. Not only because of the information that Josh was able to provide, but one of the things that stuck out to me, and I hope we all use this as a lesson, is when we were talking about process-based goals. He alluded to the fact that they're hard to explain. And when I gave an explanation about it, he actually went through it and simplified it and made it clearer. So the way I look at it is I became a better coach, and I hope everybody out there became a better coach by understanding how to set those process goals. So I can't thank Josh enough for coming on. I know he took time out of his busy schedule, but I hope everybody got what I got out of that because that was a fantastic show. So if you enjoyed today's show, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Visit the website at thectbshow.net. Leave us a review, even sign up to be a guest. Your feedback helps us bring you the best content and reach more people in the baseball community just like you. And if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, reach out to us on social media, X, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and please drop us an email, clearingthebases@gmail.com. Once again, thanks for tuning in, and I can't wait to see you back here for the next episode. Until then, coaches and players, keep practicing, stay positive, and remember, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you on the next one.